We're going to start by solving percent problems using equations today. You can use and solve percent problems doing it another way, but for right now, this section has to do with using equations. Now, we start learning about word problems really today, so I kind of want us to learn about word problems. Word problems seem to be the biggest pain in the butt for most kids simply because we have a hard time translating. And I'm going to blame English on this one, even though they probably don't have, you know, that probably not the right place to point blame. But it's difficult to understand what words mean what and how they translate to math. Well, today we're going to start you out very, very simply. And in your book, they also give you these. Of. Definition of simply means to multiply. Also, is. Whenever you see the word is, that means equals. Whenever they say what is a question? What is something we are looking for? And it can be any letter. Most of the time today I'll use the letter N. And find. Find is a direction. Okay? Won't be a question like what. It'll be a statement. So in this case, find. And I've got kids. So basically when I tell them to go find their shoes, I'm really disappointed when they come upstairs and say, hey, found my shoes, they're under the bed. Wasn't exactly the point. I want them to go find them, locate them, put them on, and come upstairs because we're planning on heading out the door. So find actually means go get, which means go get, the letter we're intending to go get, and that equals sign. So those are the things we're going to have to reference today. From there on out, they give us word problems, and we have to translate those guys and solve them. And the first part of your section in your book to help you through the homework is simply translation. Please read the directions. Okay, all they're asking you to do is translate. I'm going to translate and solve every problem, so you get kind of a flow and understanding of what's going on here. So the first problem I have. What is 9% of 86? Okay, that is a question. Therefore, in English, we have it with a question mark. All we're trying to do is translate what this means to where we can get into math and we can perform the operations we need to find out what the question actually means. So N equals 9%. 9% is kind of a casualty here, if you will, because you can't really do anything with 9%. You have to manipulate it. You can change it to a decimal, or you can change it to a fraction, whichever you see is usable or a little bit more user-friendly. Of is times and 86. That's the translation. So when your book says to translate, that's all you need to do. However, 900 times 86 does give us an answer. So you take 9 times 86, you get 774. 2 digits behind my decimal, which means 2 digits behind the decimal in my answer. And our problem turns out that N is 7 and 74 hundredths. So 7 and 74 hundredths is 9% of 86. And we think about that for just a second. 7.74 is actually a small, real small number compared to 86. Should be a real small number. Why? Because we're taking a very small proportion of that. We're only taking 9% out of the total of 100, which would be all of it, all of the 86 in this case. So let's move on to another problem, and let's move our variable around just a little bit. Give us different questions, different statements, etc., etc. The next problem I have is 3% of what is 18? Here again, a question mark. 3% of what number is 18? So 18 is a very, very small number when compared to our number because this is just 3% of it. So really all I need to do is translate that. And here again we have a problem with our percent. We can change it to a decimal or a fraction, whatever floats your boat, times N equals 18. We have it translated and to separate that in from the 300ths, we got to divide the 300ths. So now we're actually solving for the problem. Anything divided by itself is 1, leaves us with n. Over here, I'm going to make it a whole number, so times 100. What I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So 3 goes into 1800, 600 times. And if you can imagine, 3% of 600, very, very small percent of 600 is actually 18. And things start to make sense as far as the numeric values. Let's go ahead and try a couple more here. I've got 2 more that I'm planning on doing. This next one gets kind of tricky because your answer is not going to be exactly what they're asking. So bear with me here. We've got 52 is what percent of, let me move that guy out of the way here, 1300. All right, well, seems simple enough. 52 is equals what percent? What percent here is actually all the same guy. It is all in of is times and 1300. Well, all of a sudden, that's not a big problem. I can divide 1300, get it off the right side. There it goes. Divide by 1300. And n equals, and in this case, I get 4%. Well, I don't get 4%. I actually get 0.04 hundredths. Now understand, right now, as we look back a step, that's a fraction. You can reduce that fraction and reduce that fraction and reduce that fraction, eventually divide it, or you can divide it from that point right there, and you're going to get 4 hundredths. 4 hundredths isn't the question. The question is, what percent? And 4 hundredths now is the answer that we have to convert a decimal to a percent and get 4%. 4 hundredths is 4%. So make sure you're answering the question. The last one I have for you today. Find 80% of 240. Now, first thing you're going to notice is find. This thing's a shorter, it's a statement. Go get 80% of 240. Well, 80% is a majority of 240, so we ought to get a number pretty close to 240. Find, if you refer back to our table, is n equals, or go get. 80%, 80 over 100 is 8/10, which is 8/10 as a decimal, times 240. And when I take 8 times 240, I get 1,920, 1 digit behind, and that's n, or 192. We clean that up because that zeroed behind doesn't really matter. And if you look, 80% of 240, or a vast majority of 240, 192 would be that part of 240.